We met that weekend and things went from there. Best feeling ever. She basically told me we were dating now. And I'm too shy to break up with her. Don't really like her but don't like speaking up. I met her at an outing that I didn't want to go to because I just wanted to play Rocket League. Special thanks to my friends for dragging me out. She asked me to play poker with her back at her dorm. It didn't click that she might actually like me or whatever. I almost didn't call her. Something told me I prob should and she wouldn't have asked me specifically. Anyway, been married since 2007. I don't have GF at the moment. But I recently broke up with it. 3 years relationship. And she was the one making the first move. I followed. But if it wasn't for her I'd still be single. Since then I've gained a lot of confidence though and now I'm the one initiating and making the first move. It's still strange feeling for me that I am this person now. Capital D. Shotgun method on dating apps. Swipe right until I run out of likes. Do it again the next day. Work with what I get back. Roughly once a year I get a date. Had 2 girlfriends over the last 4 years so I'm rocking a 50% hit rate so far. She's a divorced colleague in another department and an even worse introvert than I am. I heard from one of my team that she had been insulted in our office and was upset about it. So I approached her with the intent to find out who did it and what happened. She admitted that I was the offender. A dismissive comment I made in jest toward a group of people had been received differently than intended. I was shocked. Never imagined it could have been me. I couldn't even remember the event at the time. However, I apologized sincerely. And that completely changed her impression of me. She said it was the first time a man had ever apologized to her. After that she invited me out for coffee and we started to get to know each other. Started texting. And you know how it goes from there. We work at the same place. One day out of the blue she texted me a poop emoji and when I asked why she said I wanted to let you know you're a little shit. We started hanging out that same night and now we're getting married next August. My BF doesn't use Reddit so I will answer for him. He's extremely introverted and has a lot of trouble talking to random people. But he tried a dating site. A Cupid to be specific. He liked me. But never messaged me cause he was too scared. One day I'm scrolling through the site. And I see him and think his picture is cute. So I read his profile. Then I liked him. I got a message that we matched. So I messaged him. We started talking in late March on a Cupid. Then moved to Discord and we've been together since. So he met me on a dating site because I was not too scared to say hi to him. Just because we matched. Asked her out in high school during our last year because I'd just come out and decided to shoot my shot. I've been with the most beautiful and amazing girlfriend I could ever hope for. If she finds this, I love you. I was super duper broke and was bumming lunch off my buddy. He insisted we go to this cafe that he loves but I hate. But hey, beggars can't be choosers. He spotted some of his friends and insisted we sit with them. One of the girls asked me about my Hermione has forgotten how to dance shirt and we just sort of clicked. I'm forging her engagement ring right now. My husband is an introvert. We were set up by mutual friends in college. They were adamant about this happening. So I told them I wasn't really looking to get into a serious relationship just yet. I had just broken up with my long-term boyfriend a week before. But I'd be happy to go on a date. So, my friends told him. She's just looking for a good time. Double quote. I made him wait 3 months before giving it up. XD. Most of the women that I wound up actually involved with more than briefly. I met through either mutual friends or a mutual activity. I think it's allowed me to get comfortable with that person, as well as getting to see them without the pressure on either of us of romantic evaluation. Then, typically, there's at least one incident with alcohol involved where one of us winds up saying more than we normally would, and crossing that line that gives the green light that it's on. Husband is an introvert. I approached him. I'm introverted too but damn he was cute and my 17-year-old self said do it. Happy I did. Moved back to town. Newly single after a 3-year relationship. Wasn't interested in a new one. Got to talking to someone about politics in an online forum. Found out she was local. And said let's grab a drink and keep talking. Had no idea how old she was or what she looked like. We got married a year later. My sister set up a family and friends barbecue for me when I came home on leave one time. She forgot to invite the friends except for the girl who is now my wife.
Eye for an eye. Vengeance will be mine. Rack and ruin. You can't run.
The Hex Angels came to my uncle's funeral. What's the nicest thing you've seen a gang do? I ran the after-school program at an elementary school in a rough part of town. Our playground was actually a city park, which meant we couldn't do the maintenance on broken equipment and I couldn't kick people out to make it safer for my kids. I'd had problems with some teen and 20-something dickheads drinking and finger banging their me-head girlfriends while the kids were out playing. And goddammit, we didn't deserve to just stay inside because cops didn't patrol. My kids deserved to play. It was frustrating. One day, a couple gnarly old 1%ers approached me while we were outside, which scared me, and asked if I had been having trouble with the neighbors coming around. I told them that it had been pretty rough. One just clapped a hand on my back and said, "Why ain't gonna have that no more? And why ain't gonna have no trouble from us?" The next day, a biker was by the basketball court keeping watch while the kids played, and left when we were done. That continued every day for the rest of the school year. Also, the guys who stood watch never smoked or cussed while the kids were out there. I don't condone their activity, but I appreciated their help. That is very cool. It's nice to hear that even rough bikers care to make sure children are alright and have a safe environment to play and enjoy themselves in. The Westboro Baptist Church came to my town to protest President Obama's visit, and to also claim that a massive tornado that killed 161 people in my town just few days prior was deserved for whatever reasons. Luckily, hundreds of bikers and gangs and truckers blocked them in at a gas station and nobody saw them that day. When I was in high school I went on a double date to go see a movie. Don't remember which one. And when we came out of the theater we realized that my friend who drove had locked his keys in the car. We spent an hour or so begging cops that we saw in the parking lot to unlock the car for us and every one of them turned us down. Then seemingly out of nowhere this gentleman appears, sees us looking in the window of our car, and asks if he can help us. We explain the situation. He says he can help. Within 15 seconds our car is unlocked. Being amazed high schoolers we just stared in awe at what had happened. Then he leaves us with these parting words. "Today is my first day out of prison. I was in for Grand Theft Auto," and off he walked. My mom got a flat tire years ago, with 3 kids under the age of 5 in the car.
Leave it all to me.
Mind you, it was this middle of summer and she had no cell phone. The typical bad butt, long-beard biker pulled over and changed the tire for her without a question. She tried to give him money, and his response was just tell everyone a warlock helped you out. When I was younger, I lived in a relatively bad part of town. I was an Asian white, and most of my neighbors were black or Hispanic. I started playing sports at school, and made friends with a number of kids, including this one guy named Thaddeus who was 2 years older than me. But Thaddeus was a big, tough kid, but a secret that he kept from a lot of people was that he sang like an angel. He told me once, and sang off, "Kelly's I Believe I Can Fly," and I've never heard it done better. I swore to him I would never tell a soul and I never did. Thaddeus got involved in some gang activity later on, and I lost touch with him until high school. I was walking home late one night when I was approached by a group of black teenagers who apparently saw me as an easy mark. I wasn't sure whether I was just going to get mugged or was going to get an butt kicking out of it too. I think my membership on the football team was the only thing that saved me from an immediate beatdown. But it wasn't going to end well. Suddenly,
Leave it all to
I
me.
hear a loud hey. The frick are you doing? Leave him alone. I look over, and Thaddeus and a couple older, 20 plus, guys are pushing into this circle. Thaddeus throws an arm around my shoulders and says he's cool. You frick with CMXI. You frick with me. The teenagers dispersed, and Thaddeus made sure I was okay before sending me on my way. I was a bit shook up at the time, so it wasn't until I reflected later that I realized that Thaddeus and all the older guys were pretty obviously strapped, and their status saved me from any trouble for the remainder of my time in high school. Thaddeus sounds like a boss. Professor told us this story while we were on a field trip in Arkansas. He was giving a lesson in the Ozark Mountains at some outcrop on the side of the road when he heard a rumble coming down the road. Next thing he knew, there were about 100 rough and tumble Hells Angels coming toward them. As they passed, he said the rumble was deafening. Finally the whole crew passed them, when he noticed that the leader of the pack called for a U-turn. As they made the U-turn, they approached the class going on and all the bikers brought their bikes to a stop. Not knowing what was going on, my professor asks if he can help them. The leader then proceeded to say that he saw something about geology on the History Channel and was wondering if he could sit in on the lecture my professor was giving. With a laugh, my professor obliges and looks back on it as the most rewarding lecture he's ever given. Perks of being a leader: make 100 bikers sit through a lecture to satisfy your curiosity. Nobody says crap. My dad was a biker since I was about 17. He loved riding on his BMW and was always tinkering with one of them in the garage. While he never joined a gang, he was friendly enough to them when they came around to his local bar, or when he saw them while on a ride with his buddies. Dad went on cross-country trips, mainly ending up in Wisconsin to visit friends. Fast forward to this past Christmas. My dad died on the 23rd, and we were having his funeral. Mom insisted on him looking proper, though I was holding onto his biker vest. A bunch of bikers came in, a significant number from a gang. I was later told, men rode in the Ohio cold on their bikes in his memory. One in particular came from Wisconsin just to give me a necklace Dad left him to fix up for me. I had this necklace since I was a small child. Dad bought it for me. It broke when I was 14, and I haven't seen it until he brought it back to me, fixed up. TLDR. Old biker came from Wisconsin to my dad's funeral give me a necklace my dad had him fix for me, that I had since I was a child. These are the kinds of things I like about bikers. Tough and scary, maybe, but you can be dang sure the majority of them will keep their word and they're easy to understand. Don't screw with them. They won't screw with you. 2 good encounters with bikies. The father of a schoolmate was an angel. Despite being an enormous, scary, hairy bear of a man who was constantly covered in leather and stunk of oil and beer, he was a great guy. He always looked after his kids and their friends. When one of my friends got lost on the local moorland, he got some mates on buggies to go find him. The second one was more recently. I ride a crappy little 50cc scooter and was at the front of a bunch of cars trying to change lanes so I could turn off the major road I was in after a light change. 2 bikies, not sure which gang there are at ton local, saw me struggling with some butthole in a 4x4 not getting ahead or falling back so I could change lanes. These 2 bikies swung in front of him and forced an entire lane to slow down, then waved me in. A lot of those biker gangs can be great guys. They employ the same tactics old time gangsters used, treat the community well so they view you in a more positive light. The bike clubs around here are great. My niece was born with a rare condition and needed several surgeries. That of course insurance wouldn't cover. In the first few years of her life, we had to raise $100,000. The bike clubs came through every time. They are some of the nicest people in the world. Just this weekend I went to a NAM Nights event which raised over $10,000, I think, for children with cancer. They are some of the most caring and charitable people I have ever met. The Yakuza in Japan are known to help with the reconstruction every time there is a tsunami attack. Friendly neighborhood mafia. My uncle used to work with kids and teenagers in inner city Chicago. He helped start a soup kitchen and a school for kids in tough situations. He also used to do gang interventions, trying to get gangs to let a member out or leave someone alone. Things like that. He was a Franciscan and always wore his robes when he went out at night or was expecting trouble. Gang members shot near him or above his head quite a bit, but they always deliberately missed. Other members of his community learned to always venture into dangerous territory in their robes because Chicago gang members just don't shoot Franciscan brothers or sisters. When I was 15, someone slipped acid in my soda at a bar. My stepdad played in a skeezy southern rock cover band, so I spent a lot of time in bars with my parents, helping my mom run the soundboard. I don't remember much about what happened, but at some point a group of ghost ridders gathered around me as I was in a corner rocking back and forth and carried me out to a car and took me home. They made me tea and brought me crackers and basically talked me through it until dawn. My parents stayed at the bar and worked. They just let these bikers take me home and take care of me. 2 of them were convicted felons with violent offenses who had done many years in prison. I've seen and heard of plenty of gangs, bikers, especially, doing good deeds, with the image of a bunch of big, burly, hairy dudes in leather brewing you a nice cup of Earl Grey really does it for me. I didn't see this personally, but about 20 years ago my mother was a 5th grade teacher in Compton. For those of you who don't know, Compton pretty notorious when it comes to its concentration of gangs and gang violence, especially in the immigrant district, which is where she lived and taught. It was a pretty average night if you heard between 110 gunshots. My mom, being the freaking boss that she is, refused to leave the district or teach anywhere else. Anyways, her first year teaching there she had a group of 5 boys, all of them living in destitute poverty. During break, they loved to draw pictures of cars like Lamborghinis and Porsches, all things that they could never afford. They all promised my mom that if they ever got a car, she would be the first person that they would take for a ride. Skipping ahead about 8 years, my mom was leaving the school late after staying to grade some tests. As she was walking to her car, she saw a shady group of boys leaning against a car watching her. She began to walk fast, but the boys got up and began walking towards her. All of them were wearing the telltale blue bandanas, Crips, and my mom said she could see one who was packing a Saturday night special. Anyways, just as she got to her car door, the group of boys reached her. One of them spoke in deep, intimidating voice, "Missus, we're here to take you for a ride." My mom thought she was being kidnapped and reached for her pepper spray. Then another of the group stepped forward and introduced themselves as the 5 boys that she taught about 8 years ago. They squeezed my mom into the backseat of her old, beat-up Cadillac between 2 of the students. They took her to a really fancy restaurant somewhere and paid for her meal in full. Later they took her back to her car, dropped her off, and told her if she ever needed anything to call them. Then drove off. TLDR. My mom went out to some fine dining with some Crip members.
More speed.
Apparently your mom is down with the Crips. That's basically the definition of street cred. Not the Hex Angels, but another motorcycle club that my uncle was a member of showed up with hundreds of people after he was killed in an accident, hit by a drunk driver while on his bike. The funeral home was about 5 miles from the cemetery, and I am pretty sure that's how long the procession was. I never had a bad experience with the Angels. After they took over the local red light district, it became a much better place to party. They throw out those who won't behave. They made sure no one is selling bad drugs. Their bouncers are very
Aristocratic
respectful.
etiquette
Drinks
is all
got
just
cheap.
for show. Just smile and nod along. I was forced to learn all of the... More speed.
cheaper and rumor has it the prostitutes got better. This is something rarely pointed out. They make crime clean. They don't want extra attention from bad drugs or buttholes causing violence. Turn it into a sort of Amsterdam.
You're a brave cigar one. Come to face the Green Knight.
He's not of this earth.
Well, this isn't a gang but certainly a story about a bad butt thug. Where I went to school was pretty middle class white. However, there was one part of town that was kind of rough as it butted up against the rougher town right next to us. There was a kid that went to my school that was a senior when I was a sophomore. He was honestly probably the biggest bad butt in my school. He was about 6'2", 240 pounds. He was all muscle and in high school he already had a body filled up with prison style tattoos. I know he had spent some time in juvie. One day from a distance I saw some other typical white thug kids kind of taunting a kid with obvious mental handicap issues. I couldn't quite tell what was going on though. A few seconds later I see the actual only bad butt I went to HS with come over and grab one of the guys. I hear him tell the kid to go pick up his freaking cars. The kids kind of scramble and I see they are picking up Hot Wheels all over the locker bay. He then makes the kids apologize to the handicapped kid. They had been kicking his Hot Wheels around the locker bay while he tried to play with them. The mean kids leave and I see the bad butt guy start talking to the kid about Hot Wheel cars. The rest of the school year the bad butt kid would bring Hot Wheels and for the handicapped kid, they would trade Hot Wheels, talk about Hot Wheels, buy each other Hot Wheels and even play with the Hot Wheels on the lunch tables. He spent so much time hanging out with this kid and his Hot Wheels. It was one of the most bad butt things I have ever seen. This somehow restored my faith in humanity. In Stockholm, Sweden in 2007, a task force of highly trained officers from the Swedish military police was tasked with hunting down and incarcerating any and all known members of the Werewolf Legion, a gang responsible for most of the sea and cannabis trafficking in Sweden and Finland. My cousin Andres was an affiliate of theirs at the time, operating a rather large marijuana grow-op in Berlin, Germany. Within a span of 8 months, 16 known affiliates to the WL were imprisoned in Sweden on charges of drug trafficking, extortion, or murder, including Andres' stepbrother, Johan. Johan was being transported to a holding facility in Halmstad, and on the way the police caravan was attacked by gang associates, believed to be part of the Ukrainian mafia. 3 officers were killed in the attack, and 1 was shot in the throat. Instead of running while he had the chance, Johan ripped off his shirt and applied pressure to the wound on the officer's neck with it. He waited with the officer, bleeding profusely from his throat, until the paramedics and police arrived. He was later pardoned of his crimes, which were listed as 2 counts of trafficking, as well as an outstanding warrant for an assault 2 years prior in a bar in Oslo, Norway. TLDR. My cousin's stepbrother, a gang affiliate in Sweden, saved a police officer's life instead of escaping. Man, this is my favorite. Sometimes it really pays to scroll to the bottom of a long thread. Once around noon I was hanging out at a scatter shop when a blood just walked in and started complaining about how all the clothes are blue and how there wasn't enough red. The guy working, who's super cool, just said they would restock and he left. Later that day towards 9 PM my friend, 15, and I, 14, were at our local scatter park. It can get sketchy when a cop rolled by the nearby basketball court. Afraid of whatever a cop might find on them, everyone flooded out and into the scatter park. My friend didn't see any of this happening and checked a text on his new iPhone. All of a sudden 3 guys in their early 20s asked him to let them see his phone to call someone, take it and run. When he said no, they started to corner him and throw punches. All of a sudden the same blood from the scatter shop that was smoking a joint on a nearby bench ran and calling them all pussies for jumping a kid and promptly beat the crap out of them. After they all ran away he kindly gave my friend $5 for his troubles. TLDR. Nice, but blood helped my friend from getting robbed and gave him $5. Partially relevant. There's a flooded quarry about 30 minutes from my house and around it is a campground that the bikers own. The cops don't frick with the bikers at all, so they just let us chill on their property, drink as much as we want, blaze as much as we want, and swim all for only $5 a day. It is very kind of them. Fun fact, you're probably swimming in a quarry with a bunch of bodies in it. I was at a gas station one day and pulled up to the pump. Got out and realized that I wasn't close enough to the pump. New car. So I got in, pulled up farther, got out and locked my door, leaving the car on. Keys in the ignition. And my then 6-month-old baby in the car. She thought it was hilarious. I called my insurance company. I have roadside assistance through them and they were planning on taking 2 hours. I called the cops who said they could not help me. Then this guy walks up, sees me in near hysteria, and says he will call his friend to come down with a Slim Jim. It occurred to me as he called his subordinate and commanded him to arrive within the next 2 minutes that this dude was some serious kind of gang member with significant rank. I ignored their need for a Slim Jim as they broke into my car, freeing my still content child and allowing me to make it to work on time. TL. DR. I have AAA now. I especially like the TL. DR. On this one. Oh, another one. I was 19 and stranded in North Miami. I had just locked my keys in my car in a rather unpopulated and shady area. I was a blonde, blue-eyed, extremely white girl, and being as I had not intended to stop in North Miami to begin with, I was just wearing a bikini top and a miniskirt. There was a gang of Hispanic youth in the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse across the street from me, just watching me. This was long before cell phones and such. I took a chance and just put on my most confident face and walked over to them and asked if anyone knew how to break into a car and could they help me. They all looked at each other for a second. You could tell they were thinking over all the possibilities. Then one of them shook his head and just walked over to my car and popped my lock with his pocket knife and a piece of wire he found on the ground. Had a similar experience when I was in high school. A news crew was visiting the school and they locked their keys in the van. They ended up asking a couple of the kids who looked like they could have been gang members. They were, if they could get it open, and they did. My uncle told me this story many years ago. He was living in a place beside some Hells Angels. My uncle is a big guy and rides bikes too, but back then he was riding, I believe, a Honda bike. Cruiser type, not a crotch rocket. Anyways, he said the HA guys would come help him fix his bike if they saw him working on it. My uncle loves tinkering with his toys. I guess they would bust his chops a bit for not driving American made, but they were just nice people and enjoyed helping working on bikes. He also said they had really good peanuts and would give him bags full of them all the time. Never understood that last part, but I guess they were in the peanut business. For laundering purposes maybe. He still says they are the best neighbors he ever has had. Respectful, friendly and kind. It should be noted that this is all happened in Canada. Peanuts is another word for H. Your uncle did H. Joking.
The world is on the attack. We need you as well.
Snake Eyes, only in theaters.
My biological father was a bandito and was kindly enough to bang my mom so that I could be given the gift of life. Heart of gold, that one. My husband and I tow our camper from Florida to Tennessee twice a year to camp in the Smokies. A good stopping point is an area called Locust Grove, GA. There's a cute overnight RV park close on I-75 and also the most kick-butt Mexican restaurant you'd never guess was in a strip mall where we like to grab a bite and a drink. One night we got in a little late and were finishing up dinner and watching the debut of Favre playing for the Jets on TV at the Mexican place. The game went to the half, and the restaurant was closing up. We asked the waiter if he knew of any place we could catch the second half, and he pointed us to some bar across the interstate. Off we go to a little nondescript place named The Grove, seated in front of your typical interstate motel. There were just a handful of cars in the lot, but it still looked open, so we headed in. The waiter was right. They were showing the game on a big TV, so we grabbed some stools and ordered some beers. I get kind of loud watching football, especially if I've had a few, so I'll let out a few hoots and hollers, and the waitress heads over to see if we want another round. I feel dumb at this point, because I'm in a strange bar with locals being sort of loud, so I apologized to the waitress. She replied in the heaviest, sweetest Georgia drawl, "Baby, you're in a biker bar, you be as noisy as you want," and then went off to get our beers. That's when we took a good look around, and our dumbasses realize we are in a real life biker bar. Like, hardcore. We notice a poker game in the back room. We see the biker flags hanging. We see the bikers at the bar in the shadows. Biker, bar, big time, but also good football game, cold beers, and what feels to be a fairly non-threatening, laid-back environment. So, we stay late, really late, and get to know Kat the bartender, and others seated at the bar, who are all super nice. We got invited back anytime during our travels. In fact, we learned many truckers stay in the parking lot of the Grove because it's convenient and they serve food. Kat told us we could park our rig there anytime, which killed us. Our camper was now a rig and to just call ahead and she'd have a hot meal waiting. She also said it's safer than the RV park because it's a biker bar and no one will let you get fricked with if you're our guest. So, we now hit the Grove every time we pass through on I-75 if we can. We learned in later visits that the gang whose bar that is are the Outlaws. They seem very nice. In fact, the last time we were there they were hosting a charity event. A chili cook-off I think. For kids. TLDR. Suburban couple stops in a bar on the way to go camping to see a football game. Finds out it's a very friendly biker bar belonging to the Outlaws. Goes back twice a year to say hello and have beers. Personally, I hate seeing motorcycle clubs described as gangs. There are many different clubs, lots of different missions and ethics. Honestly though, besides that they are doing it to get brownie points to do their bad things mentality, there are lots of people that have been affected in a positive way by clubs. I was in one, full patch member, for over a year. No, it was not the Outlaws as my username alludes. That's only a playful take on an old nickname of mine. The club I rode with was a national club and was territorial. I can say from experience we put a lot of work into Christmas toy drives, food pantries and real church contributions. Local church helped as a homeless shelter and drug rehab with counseling. I can tell you that not the biggest meanest dude in that club didn't have a tear in their eye watching a 5-year-old boy or girl open a gift they would have never gotten from their parents. Nor did they miss seeing their eyes light up when the doors to the clubhouse were opened and there was a full Thanksgiving meal on spread. The first of many for a lot of those kids. Aside from the gang-related activities, club folks are human. They have hearts, some bigger than others, but they are there. I live right next to a Hex Angel's house kinda thing. It's like their clubhouse anyways. I've always really liked motorcycles and when I was little asked my grandpa if I could go see theirs. So we walk over there and I asked this big brute of a man if I could see the Harleys and without skipping a beat, he hoists me up, sits me in front of him, puts the key in the ignition, and start going in circles through the parking lot. I was having a grand old time. And I still visit there to say hi to the guys every month or so. They let me have a shot of Jack sometimes :3. My mother-in-law was the lead nurse on the orthopedics ward. Every biker in town knew her, and she would stand up to any of them. If they complained, she'd shame them by comparing them to other gangs. She used visiting privileges as a hammer to enforce strict neutrality and a no colors policy. They respected her so much. One day she's driving to work and blows a tire. Total failure. Shredded. Who should pull up to help her but the Sons of Satan? As hardcore a badass outlaw gang as any in the country. They not only put on her spare, they escorted her to work, then repaired her bad tire and put it back on the car. She said being surrounded by dozens of bikers on the freeway acting as an escort was the loudest, but most comforting feeling ever. She sounds like a pretty badass woman. Kudos to her. Students of Reddit, what is your best story about the worst teacher you ever had? I had a 2nd grade teacher who argued with me about how to spell my foreign last name. My chemistry teacher in high school was a total dong. He would tell us if we didn't master chemistry, we should start picking up bridges to live under, and how you'll never get another job outside of chemistry. He would call people out in front of the class that had failed an exam, making several girls cry. The icing on the cake was one day, a larger girl asked him if she could go across campus to grab a notebook or something she left there. He said yeah sure, you could use the exercise. He went on personal leave for the entire year, and never came back. Had an engineering teacher who never graded assignments.
You can't run!
Pretty much glanced at them and gave a grade based on how neat it looked, not off creativity. Then every subsequent assignment pretty much got the same grade. My magic number was 88/100. In my engineering class, my final exam had 23 questions. Every kid in the class got a percent by multiples of 5. 95%, 90%, 85%, which was impossible with 23 questions. Turns out he never graded them and just gave us a grade on how much he liked us. Professor with tenure showed up, talked about baseball and how he's fluent in Chinese for the first 3 weeks of class. Wouldn't give us a syllabus the first month. Verbally abused us for not understanding what he hadn't taught us. Ran back 2 months of work in the last 2 weeks before the exam. Was surprised how much he had to curve the class up to the average. Even under tenure he can be fired for that. Tenure just means you can't lose your job unless it's proven that you aren't doing it. When I was in the 12th grade, I had an English teacher who was horribly picky with essays. Everything else was fine, but essays were very hard to get good marks on with him. I spent 15 hours writing a simple 3-page essay and finished it a few days before the due date so I could have him check it over. He took it home and said he spent about 15 minutes reading it and only checked off a few grammatical. He said the essay was fantastic, but if I fixed those I would get a very high mark. I did. I failed the essay. The same thing happened for the whole year for every essay, so I had to take the course over again in summer school. I had a college professor for physiology that was an arrogant, self-righteous jerk. As finals were coming up, he told us that he wouldn't accept any excuses for being late to the final and that we would fail it if we weren't there at 8 AM. He even told us that it would be a good idea to put the number of a taxi company in our phones in case any of us had car trouble on the morning of the final. So the day of the final, we are all there early, and he walks in 45 minutes late because his wife took his cell phone and his alarm didn't go off. Teacher in high school tried to tell the class that Achilles was a Trojan soldier. I was like, no, he was Greek. Her, no, he wasn't. Me, yes, he was. He fights Prince Hector. Her, oh yeah, right. She sent me to the office after class for making her look bad. I got detention for disrespecting her and arguing. The rest of the Iliad lesson after that was watching Troy, not even reading the story. It happens, man. I got corrected a few times by students, mind you they were in high school. What's important is how you handle it. I would simply pull my phone out to Google it and thank the student for correcting me, or thank them for trying to correct me.
He's in prison for putting Superman in the ICU.
See the new trailer online in theaters and on HBO Max, August 6th. Rated R.
In the 3rd grade we had to do a project that started with a prompt I had a dream that, and I wrote a 2-page story about how I fell into the Harry Potter world and went to Hogwarts for the day. She called a parent-teacher conference and accused me of plagiarism and said I could go to jail for using the Potter characters. This was in 3rd grade. I remember I used to come home crying after her class sometimes, and that was the first time I ever cursed. My mom let me call her a B after a particularly rough day. My 3rd grade teacher was probably the worst teacher I'll ever have. My sister had her before me, so my mom knew how she was when I was treated meanly too. My mom told me I was allowed to say she was a B, but never to her. I'm glad she understood. The teacher wasn't abusive, she was just mean and bitchy. I don't know if she was the worst, but she did pee me off the most. I had a college professor who never once showed up to class on time. It was a MWF class, so only 50 minutes long. She'd regularly show up 30 minutes late, then refuse to dismiss us until her 50 minutes were over. This class was right before lunchtime, so no one had another class to get to, but still. So after the first week of this nonsense, some student said something to her right after she arrived late as usual. The teacher got so furious and personally offended that she kicked the girl out of class and told her to drop the course because she wasn't going to teach someone so disrespectful. WTF do you call showing up to your own class 30 minutes late every day? Because I would call that disrespectful. Ms. Witherspoon. When we had her for 7th grade English, she was quirky, a little overdramatic, but not too outrageous. In 8th grade we watched her have a nervous breakdown. By the time we started 8th grade, we had for 2 periods in a row. We didn't have homeroom, but this was pretty much that. Her mood at the beginning of the year was incredibly tense, and as the year progressed, we started getting more combative against her. She had health problems, so you could write some of her behavior off, but not all of it. Midway through the first semester, things started going off the rails. As an introduction to her book about racism, she had us share every racist term we had ever heard and wrote it on the board, then added 10 more. We never read the book. One day she got tired of teaching and assigned quiet reading for the rest of the class, which was about an hour and a half. About a half hour into it, one person coughed, and another laughed
More
quietly.
speed.
She then shouted, not very loudly because of her health problems, "Do you think I'm a freaking idiot?" She never explained that. The final assignment she gave us was to read a dozen short stories, followed by a test on those stories. I actually read them all, felt great about the test, and was dumbfounded by the F I'd gotten. The progress report came soon after, and it too showed 2 Fs. We had her for 2 periods, she gave 2 grades. I stole the books the short stories came in from the classroom and took them home to grade the test myself, citing sources and page numbers. On her final day, she wanted us to tell her all of the bad things we'd ever heard about her. She'd been around that school for a couple of decades and was never well liked, so there were a lot of stories. She wept as we told her, but encouraged us to continue. The next day, all of her personal belongings were gone from the classroom, and we never saw her again. There was a substitute for the rest of the year, and she quietly retired during the summer. By the time report cards came out, I had 2s in the class, and, in regrading her final test myself, I found that I got 100%. I kept all the books I stole. Edit. Spelling. Second edit. It seems that everyone has a crazy teacher in their pasts. This one was Northern California. I had a math professor from Russia who could barely speak English. He called homework training, and if you didn't understand the problem he would just get mad at you. Growing up, my family was pretty low income. My dad was a bus driver, and my mom worked as a social worker for HHS. My dad's work hours were late night and my mom's early morning, so they hardly got to see each other. We also could never go on vacations because of money and schedule problems. Finally one day, after years of saving, we bought tickets to Disney World, my first official vacation. I still remember to this day how this teacher, 3rd grade, yelled at me that she didn't know how I could have a good time with all the homework she was going to give me. Who goes on vacation during the school year, she was saying. She wound up giving me multiple assignments, including a daily 2-page diary, and daily homework that was way more than what they were even doing in class. My parents were really pissed. They wound up having to get the principal involved. In the end, I still had to do my daily diary. However, all of the other homework was not assigned. Mrs. Rodriguez, if you still exist, I hope you have feasted on many a bag of dongs. In 1960, I was in 4th grade in a public school. As in many schools during this era, we had nuclear attack drills and had to sit under our desks, as if a desk would protect us from a bomb or nuclear fallout. My teacher would make us repeat Bible verses and have us repent our sins as part of the drill to my 9-year-old self. This was terrifying. Well, I'm 62 now and still have nightmares about this. I hate her to this day. Well, going under the desk is mainly to protect from collapsing rubble, and being at floor level under a desk can kind of shield you from broken glass. If the bomb was dropped nearby or on your school, obviously it wouldn't mean crap, but that desk could save a 4th grader's skull from being crushed by a piece of the ceiling. My very first class in high school was English. My teacher was just batshit crazy, condescending, bitchy, just really unpleasant to be around. Her shining moment was the day that she told us that we weren't allowed to drink water in her class because there are many people in our school who are allergic to water, so we have to be considerate of them. I crap you not. I had a teacher in high school who had one of those think as yourself and only yourself you special snowflake mentalities, which is fine, to a certain extent, but she took it way overboard. She also taught science, a subject that didn't often support her outlook. For instance, in an effort to get us to think outside the box, she turned the poster of the periodic table upside down, which was great except that I couldn't read the fricking periodic table. We turned in reflections about our labs. How did mixing these solutions make us feel? Then we'd have to connect the experiment to a current event. She's an English teacher now and much happier. This sounds like a story from Wayside School.
Here we go. You ready?